very successful. It's now in 4 languages. And by the way, contrary to what Philippe said, you don't get rich writing technology books. This is a $60 book for retail price. But by the time Amazon takes its cut and the publishers and all that kind of stuff, $2 goes to Scott, $2 goes to me. And we're not Stephen King, right? So it's like you sell thousands, not millions of copies. So that's why it's not a big deal that we're giving the profits to charity. It's not about making money. That book, however, is 500 pages. And it's great for practitioners to get a really good understanding of what DAD is. But you hand that to an executive and it'll collect dust, right? So the feedback we got was the executives want to know what DAD is without reading 500 pages. Even though we do say in the book, if you're an executive, read the Intro to DAD chapter or read the chapter on governance, they still don't want that big book, which is why we came up with the little one. We got it released a couple of months ago. It's like $9 on Amazon. And it's already going through 2 translations, Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese. And what we like about this one is we took the approach that the first 30 pages are about what DAD is. It's got pictures. Management likes pictures, cartoons, right? And a case study. Now the case study tries to hit the value proposition of DAD, which is what we find in organizations is that Scrum is kind of like training wheels. Once you get good at Scrum, when we go in and to high performance organizations, they've stopped doing Scrum a long time ago. And they've moved to lean and ideally to continuous delivery, right? Or they build, deploy. That's the Amazon's Google model. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with what goes on at Google. Do you understand? They got over 10,000 developers all sharing the same code tree, source code tree, right? They're committing on average every 2 or 3 seconds into that. 2 or 3 seconds of commit, right? 4,000 builds a day. And developers can put their code directly into production, right? So, and again, I agree with what Steve said. It hasn't, even basic Agile hasn't gone mainstream for the big companies, which is why we're so busy. We're teaching the Scrum stuff. But you know what? Every large organization has different levels of maturity, which is our message is you need more than one lifecycle. Because you're going to have the Scrum religion, you're going to have the Lean Kanban religion, and you're going to have the Jez Humble continuous delivery religion, and the Lean startup. Those are 4. Well, DAD has 4 lifecycles. Because we realize every organization will be doing a bit of all of them. Okay? This is where we're a bit different than SAFe. Where SAFe, when you get down to the team level, it's based on Scrum. It's based on everybody delivering stuff every couple of weeks. And frankly, it's kind of a batch system. It's quite different than a Lean approach. You go into a Lean shop, or people who love Lean, they don't like SAFe because they see a lot of waste in it. But by the way, I'm SAFe certified. I recently actually became SAFe certified in SPC because I wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about when I compared the 2, right? And I went just last month to actually got the training from Dean, so they're from the right person. Right? So, I am writing an article right now comparing the 2 because every week somebody asks me, what's the difference between DAD and SAFe? Are you guys competing? No, we're competing for mind share. But we are complementary concepts, and I'm trying to get that across. Okay. I'm going to jump into the slides. So anyway, it's really nice to be in Vancouver because it's just the other side of the mountains where I live, where normally I'm traveling all over the world. This is really nice. Thanks for having me. SAFe talks about how they crossed the chasm. I don't know if you guys have heard of that book. And indeed they have. They struggled for a while, but now they've got a huge amount of mind share, and now they're very, very busy rolling it out. We haven't got there yet. Yeah, let's be honest. We just haven't got the mind share. But just in the last couple of years, these are companies, most of these companies are not only using DAD on a few projects, it has become their standard Agile framework across the enterprise. So about 80% of those companies. One of them is TD Bank. Right? They tried SAFe. They trained 126 people on SAFe and said, this ain't going to work for us. Because you require a lot of disruption within the organization to roll out SAFe. And SAFe has a lot. They have the Lean folks, they have the continuous delivery folks, they have the Scrum folks. And trying to tell the Lean folks you're not doing Lean anymore, you're doing this big thing called SAFe, ain't gonna fly. This isn't gonna fly. So Barclays, another example. This is the biggest company we know of so far that has told us that they're standardizing on DAD. Now remember, DAD just contains Scrum and Lean. It's not like it's a separate methodology. It just means they're trying to align on terminology. And once they get down to the team level, it could be Scrum, it could be Lean, it could be some of the other things I'm going to talk about. Okay. Barclays has 24,000 IT, and that is their framework. Do they use SAFe? Yes. But the only place I know they are using it is in the US credit card division. It's a good fit. If you have one product, sort of one architecture, and 100 plus developers, SAFe is a great fit. I really believe that. But that's just one area. Mostly they have COBOL systems, right? It's in Java, it's in .NET, and different religions, like Philippe talked about next door. That allows people to make those choices, whereas SAFe doesn't. So that's why Barclays is going like that. So this is kind of fun. But so this is South Africa, Brazil, the largest financial institution in the Southern Hemisphere, Agile Bank. Yeah, Air Miles. Anyone got an Air Miles card? Right? Panera Bread. If you're American, you sure have heard of Panera Bread. Something like 1,500 plus bakeries, coffee shops. This is Brussels. Got back from Brussels. That's when I was speaking there. Yeah, so around the world. This is the new poster we just came out with because everybody's been saying, Mark, you got to get a poster. Dad's got the poster. And I love the gentleman on the end of the panel who said, he said that executives can look at the SAFe poster and they see portfolio, they see program, they see, and then the Scrum stuff that happens down there. But an executive who's got control of the IT budget sees the stuff he cares about, portfolio and programs. It just looks really good, right? As a stroke of marketing brilliance. Again, this is not a criticism of SAFe. SAFe is very good in certain situations. We just don't think it's applicable for all companies in all situations, right? A lot of people out there, they're certified on SAFe with the same hammer right now. And I also agree with what they say that with the degrees of indirection, I'm worried about how it's going to be applied. It will be applied in the wrong situations. So stay tuned. I'd be interested to come back here in 5 years and see what's happening, whether SAFe is being applied well. Like RUP done right is actually very solid, but it was misused, and so it got a bad reputation. Okay, so this is the poster. Now, basic DAD is about 4 life cycles: Scrum-based life cycle, which is Agile Delivery; a Lean-based life cycle; continuous delivery, a la Just Humble; and exploratory, from Eric Ries's Lean Startup. That's what the 500-page book is about, is to help you with team-based guidance, bringing Scrum and XP together and all these other things. Oh yeah, but what about agile governance and some other things? That's what that is. And then what we've done with 2.0, we start to address these other things that nobody else talks about. Nobody else is talking about. Are people talking about how to do agile data? Well, Scott's been talking about it for over a decade. He's got a couple of books on it out there, right? Reuse engineering. Who's talking about that in the agile world? Well, Scott talked about it back in the Enterprise Unified Process. So we pulled, it's not like we're reinventing the wheel. We're pulling good stuff that's already out there. And yeah, there's IT governance. How do you do that agilely? Continuous improvement. How do you deal with the people issues in Agile? Anybody out there running into this kind of situation? Now that we're promoting generalizing specialists or cross-functional people versus specialization, a la Taylorism, that changes your whole HR focus. Because now I'm not getting promoted when I'm the superstar Java developer. I should be getting compensated when I'm a superstar team player. Different things, right? So this is stuff that we're talking about that frankly isn't well spoken about in other areas. And this whole stuff on the yellow here talks about DevOps. So I've got some slides to take you through some of this. This is now the new landing page for disciplinedagiledelivery.com. Easy to remember, okay? The new landing page, because Scott and I had lots of content out there, but it wasn't easy to find stuff sometimes. Now, just like the large-scale Scrum website, we learned some lessons from them. All this stuff has been drilled down to find the content. So check it out. All right, let's get into some more content here. What does it mean to be an agile enterprise? Now, this is not new. We've always talked about the fact that you have your basic agile Scrum kind of model, and there's tons of good stuff there. There's nothing inconsistent, by the way, in DAD, with the good practices. Like Philippe, we don't like to use the term best practices. But all the good stuff that's out there, there's nothing in DAD inconsistent with it. But we have to build upon it to represent the realities of the enterprise. Because Scrum talks about basically the construction part, right? The sprints, the building stuff. They talk about sprint 0, but they really kind of trivialize the stuff you need to do before you get $1 million to build something, right? And so they don't talk about that. They don't talk about the releasing. I mean, Scrum is talked about in 16 pages, right? 16 pages. So we have to figure out the rest of the stuff ourselves, which is okay. It focuses on building the high value stuff first, but we think maybe you should be thinking about the technically tricky stuff as well as part of your prioritization. That's a principle that comes from the unified process. Self-organizing is awesome, but what if they're not self-aware enough to be good at self-organizing? And isn't it good sometimes to have some constraints around the self-organization in the interest of the larger enterprise goals? Maybe. And it can't be prescriptive. People say, Mark, Scrum is not prescriptive. Well, actually it is. It says you will have a meeting every morning, no longer than 15 minutes. I'm not saying, so prescription doesn't equal bad, but let's just acknowledge it's prescriptive. And it's really focusing on the team, right? Lock people in a room, 9 or less people with the business, lock the door, and build high-value software. Well, in enterprise, this is something that SAFE addresses. How do you get the teams to work together? You don't build technical debt. You understand what the architectural guidelines and reusable assets are, all that good stuff, right? So this is where DAD kicks it up a notch. Okay? People say, Mark, why'd you call it disciplined agile? Are you saying that Scrum and XP aren't disciplined? Not at all. It takes tremendous discipline to deliver working software, production-worthy software every 2 weeks using Scrum and XP. But we're just saying, well, there's enterprise disciplines we bring to the table here. So it's now, rather than just construction, we're thinking about the entire delivery cycle. We consider risk when we prioritize. And we're goal-driven, we're not prescriptive, and we're enterprise-aware. And our belief is that if you're going to do Agile at scale, you got to get good at stuff in the middle, or you're going to struggle. One of the cheeky things that Scott and I like to say is, if you can't be successful in the small, what makes you think you can be successful in the large, right? Just that you got to be solid. Now, across this pie here, we want to become better individuals. We want to become generalizing specialists. By the way, that's a term that Scott had long before the Agile Manifesto, right? But now we call it cross-functional. Whatever, same idea. So we got to become good at individuals. Need some coaching, training, etc. Got to become good teams. This is where coaching has become so popular, because initially on your Agile projects, you probably want some coaching. IT department, again, this is not really talked well. It's more very much about out there in the industry, and that's something we talk about in DAD 2.0. Is how do we? It's nice to have all these Scrum teams and Lean teams, but how do we make them work like a nice sort of wheel in the organization that meshes nicely with the other departments? And then lean enterprise, right? I liked for Agile Enterprise, I like what Steve said, is that we really need to think about how do we bring business in and help them be more agile as well. By the way, you know what? In some situations, they're ahead of us. They've been doing Lean Six Sigma and stuff like that for years, right? But there's always been IT and business. We've got to bring them together. In fact, my current project in a large insurance company in the US, I went through their pricing modeling business, which is a multi-year kind of business, and try to squish it. Well, we are squishing it using Lean Kanban approach. And then we take the IT team. Now am I going to use Scrum with them, or am I going to use Lean Kanban? Wouldn't it make sense to just merge a Lean team in there? Right? So it's business, not just IT. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the Agile IT department. I'm sure you've heard this paradigm, the plan, build, run paradigm. So I talk a little bit about this because it's something we can all relate to. Something IBM talked about for many years. Now, this is typically where your IT budget goes. Notice a lot of it is actually just running and maintaining your systems. Maybe for the reasons Philippe talks about with increasing technical debt. Wouldn't it be nice if we could actually reduce the run to 40 to 50% so we can spend more money on building high value stuff? So what we've come up with in 2.0, and it's a work in progress, it's not completely done. For instance, we're calling these process blades. Okay? It's a collection of wisdom and guidance to help you make better, trying to be agile and lean in your organization in these kinds of areas. So process blades. Okay? We've been criticized in the past for not having, we kind of nailed the stuff at the team level, but we haven't had enough guidance at the portfolio and program level. So we've created blades for it. And Scott and I have been working really hard to build out content around those, and we have. There's a lot of it out there on the Disciplined Agile Delivery blog. Some other ones, the people management one we're still working on. So in the build, these blades here, continuous delivery is a life cycle. We have 4 life cycles. Okay, so this is a just humble one. The lean startup, which is based on experiments, is a life cycle that is really good if you're building like a mobile application. You're not really sure which features people will want on their phone. So build a bit, measure who's using what, and then grow your app based on experiments. There's a life cycle for that. We've got Lean Kanban, we've got Agile Scrum. We also recognize you still need to work with other life cycles. You get this all the time. How do Agile teams work with your traditional waterfall teams? You need some help with that. People aren't talking about it out there, but it's a reality, right? It's not going away. And by the way, sometimes it's a good idea to do waterfall, in case you didn't know that. Okay? Sometimes waterfall makes sense. And release management. I'm going a little bit fast because I got, as you know, 15 minutes blocked off my allotment of time. We're still going to make sure we don't miss lunch. So I'm going a little bit faster than I normally would. And then run. We have process guidance on operation support, continuous improvement, Agile governance. Agile governance is a big hit. It's probably one of the reasons we're doing so so many financial companies are being drawn to DAD. Because nobody else is talking about do I need governance? You absolutely do. But how much governance do you need, right? And the DAD milestones that we have, and our guidance on CapEx, OpEx, is really what people have been looking for quite a while. You put it all together into this kind of taxonomy, and let's talk a little bit about DevOps. Because DevOps, we already talked about it this morning, it's one of those new hype words, right? There's job titles now, DevOps engineers and stuff like that, right? Cool, but if you ask anybody what DevOps is, if you ask 4 people, you're probably going to get 4 answers. What is DevOps exactly? Some people think, well, it's continuous delivery, build, deploy, build, deploy. And to deploy it, you're going to need some guidance around release management. Is that all there is to DevOps? No, there's more to it than that. How about operating it and supporting it, right? Who is it that says, I think it's Amazon, that says you build it, you run it. Right? You're actually responsible for keeping your stuff running. We're not just handing it off to some release management folks. So it's more. And then what we would say is, well, you know what? Maybe you're doing Scrum, maybe you're doing Lean. And what about all this other stuff? Agile data management. That's part of DevOps, because if I'm going to build it and run it, I'm going to have to change the database schema as well. So we call this disciplined DevOps, because we think there's more to it than what people will generally tell you, or what they understand. Okay? You've got to consider the whole picture. Scale. What does Agile at scale mean? Which blades is Agile at scale? A lot of people think it's simply this. Program management, portfolio management, cool, important. Scrum at the team level, and release management. What does this look like? Safe, okay? But safe doesn't talk, it's not a criticism, okay? Because we're just suggesting that safe is incomplete in some certain areas and fits in certain patterns. We call it a pattern for scaling. It's a pattern of scaling decisions that are being made for you. And that is a good thing. But it doesn't talk about all this other stuff. Right? That's why I said just now that we're complementary concepts. We think it's large-scale Scrum. Well, it's actually all of this. Right? That's what Agile is. Okay, so having gone through that, now maybe you'll understand why we have these circles here, drill down guidance on all those different things. All right, now let's do a few slides to. Pretty good. Good. Still got a half hour. A few slides on what is DAD. Some of you probably came here wanting to know what the heck is DAD, right? There's the book, and it's now in 4 languages: Chinese, in case you care, Japanese, and Korean. I'm not sure what the next language will be, because we didn't publish it, right? So the publisher just says, "Oh, we're doing another translation." The DAD framework fully addresses the Agile and Lean life cycles for build. So we think we kind of nailed some guidance around how to do these 4 life cycles. We call DAD pragmatic Agile. If you want to sum it up in 2 words, that's what it is. We're not purists. We think that in some situations, Lean Kanban is awesome. Like, as an example, maintenance teams, defects. How do you do Scrum with maintenance? If any of you who have lived this, you'll understand why I'm asking that question. Because how you do point estimating on defects, you don't even know what the source of the defect is. How long you don't know if this can take you an hour or 2 weeks to find the source. And if it's going to take you an hour or 2 weeks to do the fix. Scrum kind of falls apart in that situation. Now, by the way, I'm not saying maintenance teams are a good thing, because they're not. I don't want to open a can of worms. But when we do, because there might be some people deeply invested in maintenance teams. But generally we feel that if you put the maintenance people together with the people who build new functionality, there's just many good reasons why you want to do that, right? But pragmatic agile means that, gee, that's nice, Mark, you should say that. But we have 10 maintenance teams tell us how to do agile with that in the meantime. That's why we're pragmatic agile. So while Scrum might talk about this stuff here in the middle, we talk a little bit more, we think about the bigger picture. Now, Scrum has 4 life cycles. And one of the unfortunate things for people who spend 5 minutes looking at DAD is 5 minutes is just enough time to get really confused and draw the wrong conclusions about DAD. Okay? So they look at this picture and they go, don't like DAD, looks like RUP, looks like phases, phases are evil, DAD's a bad thing. Okay? Please don't draw that conclusion because that's inaccurate. This is the Scrum-based life cycle. It's a good starting point. It's like training wheels for Agile, right? Pragmatic. If people are new to Agile, I'm not going to throw them into continuous delivery for obvious reasons because they don't have the technical practices in place, right? They're just not ready. And by the way, they also don't have the mindset of Agile. Scrum is brilliant for getting people into that Agile mindset, right? So this is the Scrum-based life cycle. This diagram should look kind of familiar to you. It's basically Scrum. So I'm not going to repeat what Scrum is all about. Most of you probably know, not all of you what Scrum is all about. But we have these phases at the bottom. Now, and it's based on empirical evidence says, and Scott does a lot of surveys, we do a lot of surveys, it indicates that, do you know what, the average self-identifying Agile team spends, on average, a month before they get into sprint 1. Okay? This is, we didn't twist their arm, they volunteered this information as Agile teams. Why? Because they have to. Their boss isn't going to give them $1 million unless they give them some kind of indication what they're going to do with the money. They're not going to buy that, just give me money, and every 2 weeks I'll buy high-value stuff, and when you don't want to invest in another sprint, we'll stop the project. I don't know. I get it, but our business typically wants, they have bosses too, they need to explain what they're going to do with money. So if we're going to do that planning, if we're going to try and figure out how many iterations or sprints we think it's going to take, why don't we admit that? We bundle it up and we call it inception, we call it a phase. It's actually an iteration with a name called inception, that's all it is, where we do planning stuff. High-level scope, schedule, budget, risk identification. What is my team? Are they insourced, offshore? Are they co-located, distributed? These are process decisions, right? So you got to think of DAD as a bunch of reminders to make sure, have you thought all these things through? And in the book, the reason it's 500 pages is we've got tables to say when you form your teams. Here's the advantages and disadvantages of co-located versus distributed versus dispersed. And by the way, if you're going to pick dispersed, here's some strategies to help you be more successful with that suboptimal choice, right? That's what the process decision framework is. So that's different than a scaling framework, right? That shows you the structure of a program with roles, responsibilities, etc. So we're different. So this is a Scrum-based model. And then transition. Gee, it'd be nice if I could build and deploy, and my programmers could deploy into production. But does that represent the reality for most large organizations? No. Anybody here heard of ITIL? Yeah? Okay. So, and by the way, there's ways to make ITIL agile, but that's another story. But usually, if you have to go through formal release management, there's some preparation that needs to be done. In ITIL, you typically hand off deployment instructions to somebody who's never seen your software, right? And by the way, also instructions on how to roll it back. So, and then there's training materials and support materials and things, right? So this recognizes, the transition phase recognizes that we have to do that. Okay. So we've got a phase for it. Is it ideal agile? No. Do we want an inception and transition? No. But do we need one right now? Yes. Then we have milestones. I'm not going to go through the milestones, but these are really good and interesting milestones, and they can be very lightweight. It can be a conversation. It doesn't have to be signed off documents and things, okay? There's ways to be agile about this stuff, but those are good milestones. I encourage you to learn about. The next life cycle is the lean life cycle, because in some situations, lean is better than Scrum. And in some ways, we used to actually call this the advanced lean life cycle. But we took the advanced off. Why? Because lean is easy to learn, it's hard to master, actually, for many reasons that I won't go into here. But some people like the lean life cycle. Now here, if you're new to the lean idea, we don't have a uniquely ranked backlog like we do in Scrum. We have pools of work, classes of service, those kinds of things. Okay. So this is awesome. And in this situation, in many cases, an organization might want to use the lean pull system to pull work in, but they still might have to do a bunch of little changes before they can actually justify the cost of transitioning to production. Okay? So this one isn't the build, deploy, build, deploy. Just do some stuff until I have enough, maybe an MVP, minimal viable product, whatever you want to call it, before we actually transition it out. Okay? So we still have phases in this situation. Now, so just a reminder, remember I said the Scrum-based lifecycle is a good place to start, but it's a journey. As you improve, you have a backlog in place from a previous release. You don't need to spend 2 weeks putting together a backlog, do you? Because you got stuff you didn't get done. New stuff has come in. You've already got that. Right away you can save some time. You've got your team together. If you've convinced your management that long-term funding rather than project-based funding is a better way to go, you don't need to spend a bunch of time begging for money. Maybe you don't need to do a big project charter, right? All these things are, so as an organization and teams get more mature, you can squish the inception phase, and it can actually go away, okay? You still periodically might want to stop and do another vision or whatever, right? Same thing with your transition. As you automate your testing, you get your technical practices in place, you automate your deployments, then you really can build, deploy. So over time, your transition should go down as well, right? This is where we want you to get to. But pragmatic Agile realizes we don't get to Jez Humble's vision of the lean enterprise tomorrow. It's a journey. So we've got ways to get you there. And every organization is going to have different skill sets, right? And different types of technologies and different flavors of Agile. How do you, DAD gives people common terminology, common governance framework, lightweight, and allows for different kinds of life cycles. One approach doesn't suit all. Context counts is the other tagline I'd like to use. That takes us to the last, or second last, life cycle, which is continuous delivery. So what you see here, this could be once a week, once a day, 10 times a day. It's the build, deploy, build, deploy. Now, so in this little book, besides wanting to give something small, cheap, to be on the airplane, to management to say, here's what that is. That's what the first 30 pages is. The case study shows how a team starts with Scrum and gets to continuous delivery over time, right? So this shows a typical journey of a Scrum team as they improve their technical practices, how they work together on that journey. So this is what we see really happening out there, right? It's not one framework that fits all. That's one of the reasons I think SAFe is becoming so popular, is because the CIO just wants one process. The CIO still hasn't gotten that your organization is quite different, and you need to customize, let the teams customize the process rather than bolt people into a predefined process or framework. So like I said, stay tuned. It'll be interesting to see where things are in 5 years. And if you subscribe to the Disciplined Agile Delivery blog, that's where I'll probably publish my paper on how DAD and SAFe work together, where they're common and where they're actually different. We actually have different philosophies. I think, my personal prediction, oh geez, you're filming this, so it's going to come back to haunt me, is that down the road, I think that we're moving towards more of the Jez Humble Lean Enterprise vision. If you haven't read that book, Lean Enterprise, it's brilliant. It really paints a picture. Where I think we're going is we are all going to get pulled along by the Amazons and Facebooks of the world to do stuff like they do it, rather than delivering large program increments, which is what SAFe is about. Right? So we do have a difference in philosophy. For me, SAFe is, I'd much rather take the $20 million project and break it down into $1 million projects or smaller, rather than saying, how am I going to deliver $20 million in 6 months? I need 150 developers. How am I going to do that? Agile. That's what SAFe is. Right? I'd much rather have lots of teams, but give them the freedom to pick the lifecycle and approach that they want, and you can still do the continuous delivery into a common area. Right? That's our philosophy, our vision. And then last lifecycle is Lean Startup. Okay, you've already read the Lean Startup by Eric Ries. That's what this is. It's about experiments. Treat every new feature as an experiment. Don't say, and pivot, change direction based on what you're learning. Build measurements into the software to capture people's usage patterns, and so you can evolve, rather than build something and build it and they don't come. And you move on. So, do you know what? This slide says, I know it's kind of hard to read small print and stuff, but basically it shows the message that for large organizations who are new to Agile, they will typically, their destiny in our view is to use all these life cycles in some degree. They'll have a use for it. Now when I first go in there, maybe it's all waterfall, right? And they've got, by the way, they've got some Scrum stuff going on over there, successful or not, but it's sort of sprinkled throughout the organization. Well, I use this slide when I show management, just to show that when I do executive training on DAD, to give them expectations that, 2 years from now, maybe we'll have more Scrum, because that's where we like to start. You're going to have some Scrum, these Scrum teams will have actually moved on to Lean, maybe. Plus some people will start with Lean. So you got, and then I think in a large organization, there's a place to do some of that exploratory stuff, and you're still going to have waterfall. But over time, right, the Scrum stuff, yes, the big message here is continuous delivery. Will start to happen in your organization as you get your choice is good. So we don't get into the David Anderson, Kanban, religious arguments with the Ken Schwaber Scrum people, because I think we need both of them. Both approaches are good. You won't see Scott and I taking a stand on one of those boards, because our answer is, I'm sorry, it depends. Context counts. The choice is good. Lots of phrases for you. Just peeling back the onion of DAD a little bit more, it's a process decision framework. So it has 4 life cycles. But when rubber hits the road, the teams start to do stuff. What you see here is goals for inception, construction, transition, and ongoing goals. Any kind of project, whether it's greenfield, brownfield, if it's package implementation, is still going to go through these fundamental decisions. But how you do it will vary depending on your situation. For instance, explore initial scope. I'm actually going to show you an example. I'll defer my comments. But these are, any project will fulfill these goals. RUP used to be artifact-based. Used to be an expert in RUP, like my friend Bjorn here, over here. And we used to go into organizations and say, call it a development case. Here's like 150 artifacts. Which ones do you want to do? It was artifact-driven. That was a mistake, because people did too much. And we gave them a choice of formal, which means big document, or informal, which means small. So often people did 100 documents, and there were the big ones, right? So RUP got a reputation for being big. And that was never the intent. We wanted you to do the informal ones and do as few as possible. So with that, we turn it upside down. Just say, let's just start with the goals and do the minimal amount of work in each goal to move on. Okay. So exploring initial scope might be user stories and acceptance criteria. That's it, that's all. Or it might be use cases. Hope not. But there might be situations where it still makes sense. In our book, we say advantages of use cases and disadvantages, when you might use it. Advantages of user stories and disadvantages, where you might want to supplement stories with something else, which by the way, we think is very important. Okay, so if I were to drill down on one of these diagrams, like one of these goals, explore initial scope, here's what it would look like. And this stuff's all free. It's all on the disciplinedagiledelivery.com website, as well as in the book. Okay? For exploring initial scope, I'm going to need to ask myself, what level of detail do I need? Hopefully not big requirements up front, because that's not Agile, is it? But sometimes if you're doing an RFP, you know what? Sometimes you've got to do more requirements detail than user stories, don't you? Right? So, but this is ranked. If you see on an arrow like this, it means the choices at the top are the preferred choices. And in the book, there's text behind each one of these. Advantages, disadvantages, and considerations. Okay? And then, so I'm going to go with lightweight as an example. Great, that's a good decision. Now, what type of models am I going to use? User stories, mind maps, prototypes, use case diagrams, UML diagrams, freeform diagrams. What am I going to do? Storyboards. Story mapping is a big popular technique these days, which you have to know. Those are choices. So we give you some help to help you pick which ones you want to use. Now there's so many, we couldn't put them on a goal diagram, so these are categories. I'll show you more in a second, that's why I've highlighted it. How are you going to get the information through modeling sessions? How are you going to organize it? Are you going to put it into a lean pool? You're going to put it into a Scrum backlog. Choices, right? Advantages and disadvantages of each one. We help you make better decisions. And how are you going to deal with your non-functional requirements? So breaking down the categories, just to show you a little bit more detail. You see here, under usage category, we have things like stories, personas, story mapping, etc. Different categories, right? So here's what the text looks like in the book. It's actually, it did a screenshot from the PDF. User stories, how you use them, advantages, disadvantages, value stream maps, second page, epics, feature statements, flow charts, right? You have choices. That's what we're saying. Choice is good. It's not always, we won't always just do stories, right? You agree with me? Yeah? You get a hallelujah? Oh, man. Okay. All right, I knew I was asking too much. You can tell I'm a bit passionate about this stuff. This is kind of fun. So the DAD book, I mean, yeah, definitely read it, but you're gonna use it every day? No, but you might get into a situation to say, you know what, we need some more architectural modeling. How are we gonna supplement it? What should we do? You have choices, right? UML diagrams, deployment diagrams, component diagrams, sequence diagrams. There's lots of different ideas. So you would pull the book down and go to the architecture section and say, yeah, let's do one of those. That's how you use it. It's not that hard. It really isn't that hard. Okay, there's a lot of content there, but it's more like a reference. A lot of these decisions, you don't really need a guide to help you make the decisions, right? So what we're doing in 2.0 is filling out the content in the other ways that I talked about before. And I want to show you a few examples of the goal diagrams for the 2.0 content. So there's a little circle on the big poster called Enterprise Architecture, and you drill down on it and you see these are the kinds of things we need to deal with to have agile enterprise architecture, right? And you see some of the recommendations on the right-hand side. Another example, operations. A lot of stuff in operations, by the way, is traditional, but there's still agile ways to do some of these things. And some new techniques, like you folks have probably heard of kiosk monkeys or Netflix. Anybody not heard of kiosk monkey? Anybody here not heard of it? Okay, that's where they actually they have software that takes down their servers, the production servers. Netflix actually self-inflicts themselves with this. It's like a virus. They inject into their system and it randomly shuts down production servers. True story. Call it kiosk monkey. Just to make sure that they're fault tolerant. And cool. It takes a lot of courage to do that, doesn't it? Reuse engineering, ideas on reuse engineering. So I just wanted to give you a flavor for the new diagrams. So that's our claim. Actually been talking too fast. No, I think I'll finish right on schedule. So our claim, to summarize the DAT content, is that it provides a solid foundation from which to scale Agile. Now, I got kind of sick and tired of telling people every week about what's the difference between DAT and SAFe. And I still get that. And I've always told people, but I've never sort of come out and said it in a presentation. This January, I was in Brussels, and I told you I did the opening keynote for the Scaling Summit, right? And Dean was there too. And if I get time, I might show you a picture, because we actually get along quite well. We have slightly different perspectives, but Dean says we agree on more than we disagree with, because Dean's actually a pragmatist as well. Anyway, so I was at my keynote, I was going to have these slides, next 3 slides, to compare DAT and SAFe. Knowing that right after my keynote, guess who comes up on stage? Mr. Leffingwell, right? And I was afraid Dean was going to come up and say, stuff that Line said, that's all rubbish. He obviously has no idea what SAFe is, right? But it was actually quite the opposite. Dean came up in his talk and he kept saying, like Mark said, like Mark said. So that was really refreshing. So I was a bit nervous when I first came out with these slides, but because it's my honest opinion for where SAFe fits and where it doesn't. Dean agrees. Okay. In fact, I told you I went and became an SPC a few weeks ago in Denver from Dean. And the last half of the last day, we had open space sessions to cover off topics that people wanted to explore more in depth. Dean recommended an open space topic on comparing DAT to SAFe. How cool is that, right? So, it's not, he didn't see us as competitors, but we're different, and maybe slightly different philosophies. So SAFe is a good fit. Many people confuse the needs of larger organizations to deliver solutions in an agile manner. Okay, so a big company like a TD Bank needs to do agile stuff. Yeah, but there's a difference between that and I've got a large initiative with 100 plus developers. Okay, 100 plus developers. So unfortunately, a lot of companies, because they're big, say we want to do agile, therefore we must do agile at scale framework, which is SAFe. But you go into these big companies and they have hundreds, if not thousands, of small teams. And trying to get them all together and squish them into a SAFe program sometimes isn't the best fit at all. Okay? So that's why I always ask people, how many projects do you have with more than 100 developers? Okay. It's usually less. And why, by the way, why do they have to be that big? Remember that? Our first approach to scaling is to descale. That's your first approach. Would you agree, Jeff? Yeah. So some thought leaders in the room, they would agree. SAFe provides a pattern framework for delivering large software initiatives, and we need that, right? So I pat you on the back. Thank you very much. We absolutely needed to deal. Like there, I was talking to Jennifer prior to the session. She's going to India to help Cisco. Cisco's a good example. They got hundreds of developers working on very complicated software. It's a common architecture, right? They've got some, they're going in the same direction, but they just got to do massive amounts of stuff really quickly. SAFe provides, says, okay, if you want teams of 9 people, decompose the large teams into smaller Scrum teams and make them build on the same cadence and integrate periodically. It's a good idea. We needed it. Does your organization have projects this size? Or do you have many small, medium-sized projects of different types across many lines of businesses? Situation. Does SAFe provide flexibility of all types of projects? One of the things in doing my homework, because I do want to clear this up for people, is I went to, can I say the names? 2 large financial institutions and asked them why they chose DAD over SAFe. Because I wanted to know. And I said, can I write it up? And they said, sure. I didn't put their names on it. But if you go to Disciplined Agile Delivery and you search for SAFe, so disciplinedagiledelivery.com, search for SAFe, you'll see, I called it provocatively, why organizations are moving from SAFe to DAD. Because I want to get people's attention. You got to get their attention. It's not trying to say people don't do SAFe anymore, but so what I did is I talked to these 2 companies, and they said basically that SAFe wasn't going to do it across the organization, right? So keep that in mind. You're going to need something else. I don't care what your organization is using SAFe, you're going to have other projects. And it'd be kind of nice to get everybody on the same page with regards to terminology and approach and lightweight governance. And that's what DAD can do. So DAD is a process decision framework. It's not specifically a scaling framework. SAFe is a set of pre-named decisions for you, right? DAD isn't. It's got a collection of good ideas with suggestions. Provides a solid foundation for scaling, suitable for small, medium, or large teams. Like lots of small, very small companies using DAD. Non-prescriptive strategies, any organization can use it. SAFe is often seen as a silver bullet. It can be a poor fit for many organizations. SAFe is a good approach for large initiatives, but most organizations will need other approaches. Okay. So in summary, Disciplined Agile provides a roadmap for pragmatic enterprise agile. It's not purist or prescriptive. Flexibility of different life cycles with the consistency of a framework. A collection of good ideas to help you adjust your approach for your context. A collection of good ideas, right? That's what it is. It's not difficult to apply. Don't get intimidated and think, oh, this is a monster thing. It's not. If you're doing Scrum, you're already doing that. You're just not calling it that. Because it's a subset of that. That's what Scrum is. Okay? And it's got Agile governance built right in. So my advice is your organization is unique. You need to tailor your approach to reflect the evolving context of the situation that you face. One process size does not fit all. One organizational strategy does not fit all, nor does one tooling strategy. There is a certification program, if you're interested. We've actually just changed it. It used to be, after Lean Six Sigma, yellow, green, black belt kind of a thing. But we've changed it to, we still have the colors, but we changed the terminology to certified disciplined agilist, a practitioner if you've got some experience, and also a coach. There's a separate website for that, disciplinedagileconsortium.org. There's the certification. There are books. I'm not here to sell books, but if you're interested, I also have a copy here if you want to see it. And these are the major websites. You can reach out to me anytime. Don't be shy. marcuscottandler.com. And the blog, this is where all the new content is, as well as the old content certification. Discussion group. There's a LinkedIn discussion group. Last I heard, I checked with something like 2,800 members. It's very vibrant, a lot of discussion going on there. By the way, did you guys hear Jazz talk about they using DAD in Luxembourg? Right, so lots of good people contributing to the board. We also have a YouTube channel as well, where primarily talks by myself and Scott. If you want to point your boss to a 10-minute overview of DAD or a 3-hour overview of DAD, whichever one you want, you'll find it there. Okay, so I've got a few minutes before lunch. I apologize for going a little fast. I could have gone a little slower. Any questions? Yes, sir.
With regards to change management, and what I'd probably say is enterprise management of change, do you see the blades within DAD across all of them collectively covering off enterprise management of change, or do you still see the need for something wrapping around some of that stuff?
We have change management sprinkled throughout the framework depending on where the change is required. As an example, at the team level in Scrum, one of the process decisions you need to make is, so this is not change management, it's slightly different than your question, I'll get back to it. The question you folks need to decide in your Scrum project is, do you accept change inside the sprint? You know what I mean? The product owner comes to you and says, I've got, now I'm not just talking about a new story, because that's kind of usually off, no way. You got a new story, it's going to blow my commitment, add it to the next sprint, right? But if they come up and say, I've got a handful of acceptance criteria that I forgot about, sorry, or I changed my mind, can you do it? Well, it depends. It's a process decision, right? And so classically, Scrum would say no, because the team's made a commitment. And bad product owner, next time you be better prepared. And we're going to punish you, and you create a new story with those changes, and we'll do it next sprint, right? Does that help build the relationship between business and IT? Not really, right? So we have some recommendations in there. As an arrow, we actually recommend accepting change, right? But of course, we think change is good, uncontrolled change is not. So as long as the team says, yeah, we can do it, we can do the 5, might mean we need to work some overtime, that's not good. But please, maybe next sprint you come a bit better prepared with your story so this doesn't happen again, right? So there's an example of a particular piece of change. But, change, are you talking about change management for how do I get my organization to be more agile? What kind of change management?
And also, if you're using portfolio management, program management, Scrum, all this wonderful stuff to build stuff and make changes in your business, how is your operational group going to work with that new paradigm and accept those products and outputs and outcomes and all that?
Yeah, we've got lots of guidance about that. I thought what you might have been asking is how do you manage change at the transformation level? That's work that Scott and I do quite a bit, is the transformational coaching. That's why I call myself an enterprise coach. And I personally use a lean approach to doing change, because to balance the level of disruption with change, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the work of people like Deloitte folks and Jason Little on lean change. Some really good ideas there about breaking small changes into things called minimal definable changes. And so a big mistake for agile transformations is to do the waterfall fashion, which amazingly enough, people do. Like this month, we're going to deal with the HR stuff. And next month, we're going to do agile governance. No, that's going to fail. Do a little bit, tiny pieces. Now you have to use a Kanban board, a number of visual radiators to help manage the transformation. I'm not sure if that helps. Another question? Yes?
Yeah, can you give a couple of concrete examples of the situation that you mentioned on this slide, and how to apply that in that situation? Because like the stuff that you mentioned, it all makes sense, but it's kind of like broad and very generic, right? So if you can mention a couple of concrete examples,
yeah. So
that'd be good.
if I've got an organization that's new to Agile, it's their first Scrum project, and they're saying, well, the first thing we need to do is build requirements documents and all that detailed spec. I say, no, you don't. Before we jump into sprint 1, because first you want to decide which lifecycle you're going to use, right? So let's say they're going to do Scrum, so that's the first decision. Then we say, okay, now let's get to sprint 1. Developers just want to start coding, right? To say, wait a second. Do we have the right team? Do we have the people in place? Are they properly trained, which is part of the work environment? Do we have our continuous integration set up? Right? If you click down on any one of these things, it will prompt you to deal with those things, so that you don't get into your sprint 1 and say, "Ooh, darn it, forgot to set up the Atlassian tools, get Bamboo licenses, blah blah blah." Right? So then your first sprint fails because you didn't think about those things. So a lot of things will be, I see some people smiling, so you've lived this pain, yes? You're all excited about Scrum and you take people to the demo, and then the Thursday before the Friday, you cancel the demo because you don't have anything running because you're being too busy setting up your tooling. Yeah, so this helps, that's what you do. For each of these, I actually prompt my team members, have we thought about technically tricky things, right? Because a lot of times they're related to NFRs. Let's build that stuff first. We have a milestone in DAD called proven architecture. This should happen 1 or 2 sprints in, where I can go back to my stakeholders and say, I was worried about single sign-on, and I said that as a key risk, but in this last iteration, we hooked that up to our new portal, works like a dream, so that's no longer a risk. And my stakeholders go, phew, take that one off. So basic risk management doesn't go away with Agile. A lot of people think it does, by the way. I could do. Philippe did a few rants. One of mine is, you take a 20-something Scrum Master and make them run they send them to a 2-day Scrum Master course and then make them a Scrum Master. We call it a team lead. And expect them to be successful on an Agile project when they haven't managed any projects before. A lot of times they fail because this project management 101 is still required on an Agile project. And part of that is risk management. And a lot of times they just don't have the background to do that. So we help you. But these are good reminders. Do we have our funding lined up? How big do we think this thing is going to be? How often do we want to release to customers? These are all decisions, right? We can help you make those decisions. Okay, framework is free. There's no cost to it. Right? I'm not here to sell you the framework. I'm here to sell you on the approach, because we think it's solid. Or we didn't reinvent it. I think we're just about done. 2 more minutes. One more question?
Any tools for the framework?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, there's not. We one of the banks that's using DAD has created a spreadsheet with all the decisions, and to say, well, that's nice, Mark, that you say you recommend this change, but at our bank we have to do one of these. So team self-organizing and all that good stuff, but when you get to this decision, please do one of those, right? So there's that. That's the enterprise self-organization within an appropriate governance framework. That's what we're saying. But there's no tool per se. So I'm not here to sell tools either. There's different ways people deal with it. Sometimes they put the decisions into wikis, track the decisions in wikis. If you need to track the decisions, maybe don't, right? Or lightweight. Any more questions? Did you find this useful? Yeah? I'm glad. And hopefully you'll maybe convince some of you to take a closer look at it. And if you want names or contacts of people using data, getting some experience with that, I'd be happy to give them to you. Okay? Thank you very much. I guess we're all done.